Written by ShepardOfTheStrong. Yeah, I get it. I sound like a psycho. Or at the very least, someone hopping on some sort of gothic trend, but please, at least try and take me seriously. I haven't slept for 11 straight days, and I'm starting to fear for my life. Just to bide some time until I either die or experience something far worse, I've decided to recount what led me to this, and maybe ask for suggestions? I had just been evicted for reasons I don't want to get into right now, and was looking for a place to stay whilst my friend Ryan let me stay at his place for the weekend. I needed a more permanent arrangement, so I began looking at some listings, or whatever you call them. I needed something cheap, something simple. A nice, easy apartment with average rent and low maintenance. It's not that I'm particularly lazy, I just don't have the time for much housework. So with these parameters set, I started searching. I looked around various posts looking for roommates and found all of them taken. After this, I began to find other housing, flat listings, jobs with housing included, etc. A few hours had passed and I had still found nothing. I was beginning to get tired, but it wasn't too late, so I knew I could keep looking for a bit. My minor dedication proved almost worthwhile when I found, almost by accident, an advertisement for an apartment. At around $250 a month, it was really cheap, especially considering the state of the house. Now at first I thought this was probably a red flag, some sort of scam, or maybe something a little worse. I was desperate, but I didn't think it was worth risking it yet, so I pinned the ad and kept looking for an hour or so. I decided that if when I woke up in the morning it was still there, I'd check it out. That hour came and went with no flats fitting even close to that price and quality. Eventually I fell asleep, and when I woke up I checked the listing. Still there. Now, this might have meant that since no one else took this opportunity, that it was even less of a good idea than before, but I decided to at least check it out. The complex was just a short drive from Ryan's, but he had already gone to work, so I decided to just walk. After that was done, I headed out, and it had been 20 minutes, maybe half an hour max, when I reached the building. It just looked average. Not run down, no hotel suite. Just average. This was more or less what I wanted, so I set my previous concerns about the place aside and, without thinking, went straight up to who I think was the receptionist. I don't really know if she even worked there anymore. I'll skip over the conversation as well as any details regarding my room number or even the place's name for obvious reasons. But it ended with me finding out the girl's name and me agreeing to a few conditions. Number 1, I would move in today. Number 2, I would keep the doors locked when I was both in or out of the room. And number 3, that I could prove that I was sane. I had to take a weird psychiatric evaluation for the third one, but even so I didn't think that was very out of the ordinary. Just a very efficient way of managing an apartment complex. I didn't have my stuff with me, but I promised the girl, who I shall now refer to as Blair, that I would return before 10 p.m. I held true to this arrangement, and after packing up and saying goodbye to Ryan, I returned back to the apartment. I got my room key from Blair and took the elevator up to the floor my room was on. It was only a few rooms away from the elevator, so I didn't have any time to second guess my decision before I was already in the room. Upon looking around, it looked just as average as the rest of the building. White curtains, small bed, yellow wallpaper. At least I was finally seeing some color in this building. It was pretty late and I was tired, so I just dropped my stuff and went to bed. When I woke up, it wasn't morning yet, so I looked over at my phone. 11 o'clock, it read. I brushed it off as being nervous about moving into a new place. I tried to get back to sleep, but to no avail. Ultimately, I gave up and began looking through my phone. Sometime later, I was just casually rereading something funny my old friends had put in my group chat. Something just came over me. It was this horrible pain in my neck. It felt like hot metal being slammed into my neck. It was agonizing. I tried to yell out, but I couldn't make any sound. All the while, my ears were ringing and my vision was obscured by blinding lights of different shades of green and blue. After what felt like hours, the pain subsided and I was left gagging and sputtering on my bed. I felt around my head and neck to see if I was maybe hit by something, but I felt fine. I still turned on the light before looking back at my phone. It had just turned to 11:03. I thought maybe I had been spiked, but upon thinking back about what I ate and drank, it seemed impossible. Maybe I just freaked out momentarily. It could have just been a weird fluke hallucination like those people who hear gunshots before they go to sleep. I decided to just stay awake and ask my friends about it when they woke up. The rest of the night and morning went by pretty uneventfully, aside from that weird feeling you get after staying up all night. I asked my friends about it and they just told me to wait and see. If it happened again, call a doctor. After that, I just chilled out at the apartment. It was Saturday, and creepy pain hallucination or not, I was set on relaxing for the day. Sooner or later, I felt tired again, but just as I was going towards my bed, I staggered. I don't know what came over me, but my mind went numb, I guess, and my body fell limp. I woke up, but not where I had fallen asleep. Act 1. I heard as I began to get myself off of the ground. I looked over myself and saw I was covered in mud and grime. I looked around and only saw a dark forest in front of me. As I squinted into the darkness, I heard something in my head again, much clearer than before. Act 1. Go to the forest nearest to you and walk exactly 54 meters forward. Do not worry about the forest being too small. Simply clear your throat and wait 54 seconds for the forest to hear your request. Once this is done, you may continue walking. At this command, I began to clear my throat. I was paralyzed with fear and confusion, but after a couple seconds, I began walking instinctively. The air smelled clean and unpolluted, a far cry to what I was used to. After a little while of walking, I began to hear that voice again. I can't describe it exactly, but it was very deep and monotone. Act 2. Upon your arrival at the 54th meter, you should be able to see the small clearing between the trees. You must now be very careful. Listen to the sound that you hear to the left of you. For beware if you do. But before the voice could finish, I found myself walking towards the clearing. As soon as I'd taken my second step, I began to choke. I felt that feeling of searing pain on my neck as I clutched it with both hands. My mind was flooded with red and white. It wasn't long before this pain overwhelmed me and I fell to the floor. I was unable to move as I heard screaming in a language I couldn't understand. Many things sounded out around me in just as much pain as I was in, it would seem. These noises were accompanied by skittering around me as I saw a pale, hairless hand reach out to my own. I woke up in a jolt and looked around. I was back in my apartment. Thank God. I knew that whatever the hell was going on, I wanted no part of it. I ran out to open the door but found it locked. I heaved and heaved with all the might I could muster, but it didn't work. I turned towards the windows beside my bed, but as I neared it, I stumbled again. I woke up in that same place, that same dream forest at night, as I heard that same voice call the instructions, as I saw myself walk towards that same clearing, as I felt that strange thing touch me. And then I woke up, back in my room feeling more drowsy. This has repeated several times, and I'm getting sick of it. It is making me go insane. But I have learned a few things at least. 1, I only stagger and fall asleep when I go near the bed. 2, if I fall asleep normally, I will go back to that nightmare forest. 3, I know there is something to the left of me, and I know the voice is warning me of this. 4, in spite of this, I cannot influence my movement. 5, Nothing I do to try to escape this apartment will work. 6. Whilst the internet does work, I only have access to a single chat window, which is where I am writing this. 7. I don't think I need food to survive anymore. And 8. Since I stopped sleeping, that searing pain and the blue-green colors have been showing up at least twice a day. This is all I've learned so far. After maybe my 13th or 14th time repeating that cycle, I just decided not to go to sleep at all. It has been easier than I thought it would be. I don't think I actually need to eat and sleep, but that starvation and sleep deprivation pain is definitely still there. But I haven't fainted or felt sick. It's only the weird feelings. I began to pass the time by just looking around cupboards and shelves to find anything that I could use to escape this place after day 10. All of them were empty aside from one. This one simply had a torn page. It was burnt and scarlet in color with bright white ink. It read, "How to cast your mortal form and embrace ancient worldly life. Chapter 1, Weak Transformations." English translation thanks to the comments. Act 1. Go to the forest nearest to you and walk exactly 54 meters forward. Do not worry about the forest being too small. Simply clear your throat and wait 54 seconds for the forest to hear your request. Once this is done, you may continue walking. Act 2. Upon your arrival of the 54th meter, you should be able to see the small clearing between the trees. You must now be very careful. Listen to the sound that you hear to the left of you, for beware, if you do not listen and respect the will of the wilds, they will consume you. Nature is a vengeful beast. You must wait until you hear white noise. Only then may you continue. This may take minutes, hours, days, or even years. Be patient, for as soon as you step forth without nature's blessing, you have forfeited your soul to her. Act 3. Upon hearing her blessing, go forth into the clearing. Whatever you do, whatever you hear, whatever you see, you must not look in any direction aside from forward. Doing so will end with you being dragged into the forest and being subjected to fates worse than any human could imagine. Act 4. As soon as you see a cottage in front of you, stop. Taking so much as one step further will end with an even worse fate than before. Because outright defiance to the wilds is a far worse crime than stupidity and disrespect. Clear your throat and wait 54 seconds again. You will hear no indication of if nature has let you pass, but you will know soon enough. Act 5. Continue walking to the cottage. You should see an elderly man, hunched and withered, sitting upon a log. Upon further inspection, this man will appear to be made of bark and moss, as well as being himself an extension of the log. State your name and age to the man. Do not lie. Doing so will incur the outright wrath of the man. This is to be avoided at all costs. Act 6. Provided you have answered the man truthfully, he should welcome you warmly, although he will not move. He will reveal his name to you, as well as his own age. Both of these aspects he changes at will. He will then ask you if you wish to hear a story. Be polite and accept the man's invitation, but never sit next to him. Find any polite way of explaining to him that you cannot. I need not explain your fate, should you sit next to him. Act 7. The man will begin to tell you one of 3 stories, one of creation, one of preservation, and one of destruction. You want to hear creation. If at all you hear of the other 2, please politely tell him that he has told you already. He will think himself forgetful and tell another story. If you do hear the one of preservation through its entirety, upon finishing his story, the elder will stand up from his logs and walk away. You may try to run. You may accept this fate. But both choices result in you taking the tree spirit's place. I will not, under any circumstances, explain the result of listening to the story of destruction, nor will I explain my reasonings. Act 8. Once you finish hearing the man's tale of creation, you must thank him for his wisdom. He will then offer his left hand to you. Do not take it. Doing so will have proven that you did not listen to Freya, and soon feel the consequences. Instead, ask what is in his right hand. He shall show it to you. It may be a mushroom, or it may be a seed, or a sapling. Regardless, you must consume it in front of him. No matter what you feel, no matter how painful it is, you must consume it fully. Now, you may rest knowing that your days as a mortal are numbered. 9, exactly. I suggest you remain in the forest with the old man to accompany you, whilst you shed your skin and embrace your new eldritch form as an eternal servant to the wilds. As I, and now you most likely know, these were the instructions I had heard before the addition of the ending of Act 2, as well as the other steps. I am seriously freaking out about this whole scenario, especially the Lovecraftian instructions. I am in grave need of any advice and aid. I may have an idea of what to do regarding the dreams and the steps, but I need to know if it's my only option. Thank you for listening. You can probably handle another horror story, right? The kind of voice you'd expect to hear from a narrator or radio host. It's a shame we don't know any narrators.